What's going on, everybody? It's Dylan at the Bottom Line View, back for another video. This is the weekly NFL topic video. Usually it's on Mondays, but since this is such a long one, it's uploaded today on Tuesday. So thank you guys for the patience. This is a big video. This is a long one. We're going to be talking about every NFL team and why your favorite team won't win the Super Bowl. I had this idea last week. I was like, what's the next topic video? The legit video is doing great, by the way. Thank you very much for that. Almost 4K on the New Orleans Saints video as of this recording. But I was like, what's the next one? And I'm like, you know what? I have a 2-week project here. This one's going to be why your favorite NFL team won't win the Super Bowl. I want to get the negative one out of the way first, and then we have a more positive why your team will win the Super Bowl up next Tuesday. So let's go into it. They're usually going to be about 30 seconds long when it comes to each team. We're going to start from the AFC West all the way up because of the Monday Night Football game later on. So let's get to it. All right, first we're starting off with the AFC West, and we're going with Oakland Raiders first. I think Derek Carr has been, inconsistent. He got hurt, missed a game, and then had to go up there against the Chargers and struggled. Threw a lot of passes against the Chiefs and got them the victory, but at 3-4, they're going to need him to be very, very good to win football games. The running game hasn't been all that great with Marshawn Lynch. The defense has been a concern for me. I'm not a big fan of this team going forward in terms of that, plus a lot of teams having to get that wild card spot. I don't know about the Oakland Raiders right now. Next up, we have the Los Angeles Chargers. This team always seems to be in very close games most of the time, but are not able to finish. Phillip Rivers is only getting older, and sometimes I can trust him, and sometimes I don't. And they're playing some pretty hard competition the next couple of games. They're playing the Patriots and the Jaguars the next 2 weeks. They got some hard games down the line. This team is a team that I don't know can really finish, and they're going to have to finish. And if they sneak their way into the playoffs, which, by the way, no 0-4 team has ever done, they're going to have to face a lot of competition in order to get farther on. I don't think they're going to be able to beat big teams like the Patriots or the Steelers, so that's why the Chargers aren't winning the Super Bowl. Next up, we have the Denver Broncos. I like the defense. Obviously, the defense is very good, but their offense to me is scaring me. Right now, their confidence has been shot. They got their first shutout in 25 years yesterday against the Chargers. It was a hard game for them. Trevor Siemian's not looking as good as he did earlier on in the season. I think his confidence is shot, and you can't have that. You got to have an offense that can score a lot of points, and I don't think this offense is going to be able to do that against some of the better teams in the AFC. So I don't see this team winning the Super Bowl with that matter. And finally, for the AFC West, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. I like the Chiefs. They're doing very well in the regular season. They've lost their last 2 games in some pretty interesting fashions to both the Steelers and the Raiders. I think when it comes down to it is that they haven't had the playoff success before, so I don't have that much hope that they'll do it again. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same thing with the Chargers. A decade ago, they were really good at getting to a certain point, the AFC Championship game, and then always would get beaten by a better team. Now, are the Chiefs still the best team in the AFC? It's debatable now. There's a couple of teams that are getting a lot better. They're growing in potential. And I think if those teams get a lot stronger towards the regular season, this Chiefs team might be scared because they will make the playoffs. They will do well. They might even make it close to the AFC Championship game. But I think there will be better teams down the line that could stop this Chiefs team and their confidence. So, playoff success or lack of playoff success beforehand is the reason they are not going to win the Super Bowl. Now we're heading to the AFC South. First off, we have the Indianapolis Colts. There are a lot of problems with this team. Their offensive line cannot block anybody worth a crap. They got sacked 10 times by the Jacksonville Jaguars yesterday. Brissett was on his ass most of the time. T.Y. Hilton called them out. There's a lot of dysfunction right now. They got to wait for Andrew Luck to be the quarterback. Jacoby Brissett is a good quarterback, and I like him, but he's not going to be the leader of this team. They were, at best case scenario, they could win this division because of how lacking it is, but they will have no playoff success because they're so dysfunctional. They've got really not a lot of talent right there, and Andrew Luck's not the quarterback. Next off, we have the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans in their 15 years have never went to a Super Bowl, and I don't think this is going to be the case this time around or winning the Super Bowl. I like Deshaun Watson, but again, he's a rookie. He's got to make those mistakes. Not a lot of rookies have that much playoff success their first year. And then you go down, the losses of Whitney Merciless and J.J. Watt are critical. They're not that big right now because they're playing in some weaker games, and that division isn't all that great. But when it comes down to playoff time, you're going to have to stop some of the best quarterbacks in the league. I think it's going to be difficult not having those guys around. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle. That AFC South, I don't think is all that impressive. They got some pieces that I like and some, offenses or defense that I like, but I don't think the Texans are going to go very far due to their losses. Next up, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Look, I think it's pretty simple to me. Blake Bortles is not a quarterback that's going to lead this team to the Super Bowl. Again, I feel like this AFC South is full of teams that could make it to the playoffs, but then would get stopped right in the wild card round by a better team, by the fifth seed or even the sixth seed if they're going to make it there. I feel like this team has good stuff. Their defense is really, really solid. But I cannot trust Blake Bortles to get it done. And he's definitely, even if they get past the wild card round, not going to be able to get it done against a team in the divisional round. There's going to be too many teams like Kansas City or Pittsburgh or hell, even New England, if it gets to that factor, that would stop this team, no question, in its tracks. They aren't making the Super Bowl. And finally, for the AFC South, we have the Tennessee Titans. Man, I had so much hope for this team. And yes, they are 4-3, but they have looked rough. They are in rough shape right now. They got Mariota. He still looks like a little bit injured. He's trying to get back to 100%. Mitch has called him an average quarterback. And can average quarterbacks lead teams to championships? Every once in a while, but not when other teams in the conference have some really dang good quarterbacks. I don't think this team has it all. The defense has been very this season, and I just don't think this team is going to be able to take that next step ahead. They got a couple more seasons to rebuild it. Next up, we have the Cleveland Browns for the AFC North, and we don't have that much time to talk about why they won't win the Super Bowl. Next up is the Cincinnati Bengals, and the struggles have been on the field quite consistently. Andy Dalton has not been a good quarterback this season. He hasn't led the charge. Other than A.J. Green, a lot of their production and the receiver group has not been there. It's been very bad. Joe Mixon I thought was going to have a bigger impact, and he got some in the last game, but hasn't been that star that I thought he was going to be. Like the Alvin Kamara has been kind of that guy for the Saints. We'll talk about them later, but yeah, this Bengals team doesn't get me hyped at all, and they're losing big games in the division, so not good for the Bengals. Next up is the Baltimore Ravens. I think that it comes down to injuries and the fact that the offense isn't as explosive as it should be. I think Joe Flacco is not an elite quarterback. He's never been an elite quarterback, even after the big money that he got after winning the Super Bowl. There's just not a lot of flavor there. They're not as good as they were when they were in their height, their peak against the Steelers. When those guys were having that big rivalry, it's just not there, and they're gonna have to compete against some really good teams. Can they beat the Patriots? Yes, because for some reason they always find a way to do so. But I don't think they're gonna be there. At best, they could get a wild card, but they're not playing well and not winning big games. So that's why I don't think the Baltimore Ravens will be winning the Super Bowl. And finally, for the AFC North, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. If I had made this video a couple of weeks ago, it would have been really obvious as to why this team won't be winning. But they've gotten a lot better. They've gotten to 5-2, which is the best record, tied for the best record in the AFC. I don't think they'll win, though, because they're going to have to play New England. I don't think they'll ever beat New England in the playoffs. I think that's like their unspoken rule. And I think there could be a couple of teams that have a good defense that could really stop them. We saw it a couple of years ago when they were playing the Broncos, where the Broncos defense just annihilated them. I don't know if they're even making it, but when it comes down to it, I think Pittsburgh will be stopped by a couple of defenses. That defense for the Steelers in particular hasn't faced a great quarterback. And won't until they faced Alex Smith. But other than that, they won't be facing, that until Tom Brady later on the year. So it should be interesting. But I don't know if the Steelers just quite have it. The AFC competition might be too much for the Steelers, and they might falter again. Now we're going off to the AFC East. First up, we have the New York Jets. I thought this team was going to go 1-15, so that should show you right there. But they're 3-4. Josh McCown is not a quarterback that's going to lead you to the Super Bowl in any way whatsoever. And I think there's better teams in this division that are going to be more of an impact down the line. And they don't have that much talent at the receiver game. There's too much to hinder this team from even making the playoffs, much less the Super Bowl. Next up, we have the Miami Dolphins, who were surprisingly 4-2, shockingly 4-2. There's some pieces that I like. I like Jay Ajayi, I like Jarvis Landry, but you have a quarterback like Jay Cutler or your quarterback right now, Matt Moore. They're not going to be able to lead to success. Jay Cutler's definitely not a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and neither is Matt Moore. And I think that's what it really comes down to. And plus, when it comes down to it, I think competition in this AFC is going to be stronger for them to face. They're not going to be able to beat good teams. They lost to the Steelers in the wild card round last year. I don't think they have what it takes to be winning the Super Bowl here. Next up, we have the Buffalo Bills, who are also 4-2 as of right now. What I think about it here is that the inconsistency factor is going to come into play. They beat the Broncos and the Falcons, but then they also lost to the Bengals. I don't really know how that works. I like Tyrod Taylor. I like some of the group here, and I like some of the defensive matchups, but the inconsistency factor is a concern, and I don't really know if this team's going to be showing out on the biggest stage. They're definitely not going to be able to get past some of the better teams in this division. And finally, for the AFC, we have the New England Patriots, which is always the most difficult to talk about when it comes to the AFC. The New England Patriots, I think, is two things. If that defense gives up as much as they did in those first 6 games, it's not going to work out well in the playoffs. And yes, they have gotten better in the last couple of weeks, especially the game against Atlanta on Sunday Night Football, but I think Atlanta kind of just rolled over and died, and their season might be dying. But when it comes down to it, you just cannot let quarterbacks consistently get over 300 passing yards on you. And if there were some better quarterbacks out there, they could have won those football games. And second, I think the loss of Julian Edelman is going to play big when it comes down later on in the season. If Gronk is hurt, I'm not saying he's going to, but he's always been lacking in being in the game sometimes. That could be a big factor. I think there could be a defense or two in the AFC that could be able to stop them. And if they get to the Super Bowl, there could be a really, spicy NFC matchup we haven't seen in a while that could upset the Patriots. So you never know. You never know. Off to the NFC West. First off, we have the San Francisco 49ers, and like the Cleveland Browns, we don't have enough time to talk about why they won't be winning the Super Bowl. Next up, we have the Arizona Cardinals. Yes, I know, the 49er one was short, but there's a reason for it. When it comes down to the Cardinals, they're just old. They're really, really old. Larry Fitzgerald's still great, and, AP had that one great game, but Palmer was just inconsistent to me, and now his arm's broken, so he ain't playing for the rest of the season. Now you have Drew Stanton out there, who is not a good quarterback. He's a good hype man, but he's not a good quarterback that's going to lead you to any success. And they were still the 3rd best team in the NFC West, and now they're really going to be struggling without having Carson Palmer on the realm, so they're not making the Super Bowl. Okay, next up we have the Seattle Seahawks, which I know a lot of people in the comments will be talking about. With the Seattle Seahawks, they have not started off well. They have not really played a tremendous game of football. They played a good game against the Giants last week, but it's the Giants. They're pretty much dead out of the water. They struggled and lost against the Titans, who aren't all that good right now. They lost to the Packers. They have had some real struggles. Their win against the Rams was very, very close. Could have lost that game due to a Cooper Kupp catch. But I just don't see this team having that, great sense of urgency right now. They're not getting, they're not pumping it up right now. That could change during later on in the season, but if I'm seeing it as it right now, I don't think this team's particularly strong. I don't see it as that kind of way that I used to see out of the old Seattle Seahawks teams, a couple of years ago. There's something different here with the Seahawks. That's how I feel. And last up for the NFC West is the Los Angeles Rams. I made a legit video about them a couple of weeks ago. Thank you for the success of that, by the way, and the Saints one, which we'll talk about later. But when it comes down to the Rams, I think maybe inexperience, again, is going to take over for this one. I think they'll make the playoffs, but I think they're going to have a couple of hard matchups if they do make the playoffs. Let's say they play the Saints. That could be an interesting matchup for them that they are going to have to score and score and score. That might not be a favorable position for them. There's a couple of teams, the Vikings, if they play that defense, they're not going to be able to score as much. Maybe Sean McVay is going to have a hard time struggling in his first playoffs as a head coach. There could be a couple of factors with the youth here that I think could factor the Rams' success in not making it to the Super Bowl. All right, NFC South time. First off, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I thought this team was going to take a big step up. I really was liking what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were going to bring to the table this season, and they have brought diddly squat. Jameis Winston hasn't taken that next step to being a great quarterback in this league, to the top 5 or even top 10 discussion right now. He's struggled. This team isn't really hitting on all cylinders, and they haven't had a big win this season. They've beaten Chicago and the Giants. Those aren't two really great teams right now. Chicago's getting better, but, they really haven't hit on all cylinders, and they're not going to be able to figure that out before they get even close to the postseason. All right, next up we have the Atlanta Falcons, and I think this team is pretty deflated at this point. I think they've lost all their confidence, all their mojo, all their swagger that they had before, and you wanted this team to succeed, but I think they're really in the Super Bowl hangover. They lost huge in the Super Bowl, and now they're not able to score points. They didn't score points for over 90 minutes in the last 2 games, and halftime of the Dolphins game and through much of the Patriots game. I think Kyle Shanahan leaving was a big issue, is a huge issue, and that's why they're not getting the correct play calls, and they're not getting some of that high offense that you want to see out of the Falcons, or we did last season. Big things, and I just think they're losing their confidence right now. That's why they won't win the Super Bowl this year. Next up, we have the Carolina Panthers. I think Cam has been supremely inconsistent. He's had a couple of good games where you're like, man, this guy, at first at the beginning of the season he was bad, really, really bad, and then he was starting to get really, really good with the stats, and now he's slid a couple of games. They lost 17-3 to the Bears on Sunday, and I'm like, I don't really know. The defense was still very good. They only gave up 3 points on 7 passes from Mitchell Trubisky, but this offense doesn't have that flavor. It doesn't have that sizzle. Cam Newton has been inconsistent and more caring about his wardrobe than going out there and producing at good quality to win their division. So I don't think they're going to have much success here. And finally, for the NFC South, we have the New Orleans Saints. Thank you very, very much for the success of the legit video. Over 4.5K views. But a lot of people were on my ass about the Saints here. And I did make a couple of incorrect statements, but let me tell you this. First off, Drew Brees did throw 2 interceptions in this last game, so win on me. But when it comes down to it, I think the Saints are an interesting team. Coming into the season, we didn't really think that this team was going to be succeeding, and now they're 4-2. They've beaten some pretty credible teams. When it comes to the Saints and why I don't think they'll win the Super Bowl, is I think that Saints defense come playoff time is going to have some hard tests. I think they're going to be struggling, and I'm not 100% sure if they're going to be able to get it done. I do like a couple of players on there, but when the NFC comes down to it, NFC is very unpredictable, and you never really know when it comes to the NFC. And I feel like if they were able to get somewhere to the NFC Championship game, I feel like their defense is going to falter. I feel like missing Brandon Cooks is going to be a bigger significance to this team the farther they get on to the playoffs. They want to have that huge threat down the field. I feel like that could be in hand. Drew Brees could throw a huge interception, and I don't think he would. But you never really know when it comes to a Saints team and at that time and stage. So, going down further on might be their question for the Saints and why they won't win the Super Bowl. All right, now we're on to the NFC North. First off with the Detroit Lions. The curse. The curse. They have not won a playoff game in over 60 years. I think this actually is the 60th year. They can't win playoff games. It's just they're not allowed to. They're struggling right now. They started off pretty well, and now they're 3-3. They're now coming off a bye week, so they're gonna have to step it up. And the loss of Aaron Rodgers does help them in their case, but man, it just hasn't been looking all that great. They're gonna have to score a lot of points for this team to win. They scored 38 against the Saints, and they put up 52 on them. 52. That's not gonna work if you're gonna want to make the playoffs, much less get to the Super Bowl. All right, next up we have the Chicago Bears. When it comes to the Chicago Bears, I think it's pretty obvious that their main issue is they have no receivers. I know Mitchell Trubisky's finding a way to win these games without him. He threw 7 passes last week. 4 completions for over 100 yards. I don't understand that. Their defense is great. Eddie Jackson got those 2 long touchdowns. But with no receiver threats in the playoffs, it's going to be very difficult. I don't even think they'll make it that far. But let's, rhetorically say that they're going to make it to the playoffs. If you have no receiver threats, you're not going to be successful. You're not going to be able to throw screen passes to your running back every single time. It's just not going to be as successful. For the Chicago Bears, this is a rebuilding process. Get it done in a couple of seasons. It's not going to work right now. Now we're talking about the Green Bay Packers. With the Green Bay Packers, they always start off really, really slow, and they started off pretty slow. And then their final nail in the coffin came when Aaron Rodgers went down with an injury. That was their biggest injury. Huge. It's going to take them out of playoff contention, which they won't be able to play in the playoffs. Brett Hundley's not the solution. They've got a lot of injuries on their offensive line with Bakhtiari and Bulaga. It's not going to be a good situation. There's just so many injuries with Rollins going on the IR. Green Bay just needs to rest. They need to go out there and make a good draft selection so that next year Aaron can get some help. He has some good receiver help, but the defense needs to get more solid. With Aaron Rodgers gone, this team's not going to have any success going forward without him doing all the things that Aaron Rodgers would do on a regular basis. And finally, for the NFC North, we have the Minnesota Vikings. I like the Vikings. I like how they're still very scrappy at this moment, but I think it comes down to two things: the injuries to the quarterback and the running back. Not in the injuries to the quarterback, but you have three quarterbacks that are in very weird situations with Case Keenum, who's okay but not great, Sam Bradford, who's consistently hurt, and Teddy Bridgewater, who we have not seen on the field in 2 seasons. And then a big loss was Dalvin Cook. Jerry McKinnon and Latavius Murray are doing good right now, but the playoff production, I think, would have been really, really solid had Dalvin Cook being in there with his aggression of running. And now that he's not there, and with the questionability of the quarterback situation, I don't think they're going to be able to have a strong stranglehold of getting points in the playoffs. That's just how I feel. Last one we have here, last division, we have the NFC East. A lot of people will be talking about this one. First off, we have the New York Giants, the team I actually had going for the Super Bowl in the NFC. But they've been pretty awful. The reason they're not going to go in is they have no receivers. OBJ is gone. Brandon Marshall is gone. Dwayne Harris is gone with injury. They're already 1-6. They don't have a lot of talent right now. Eli's not playing great. There's a lot of problems, and I think Ben McAdoo should be fired at the end of the season so they can get a new start. They can get a good pick in the draft, and then try to make this team go forward, because we thought this team was going to be great, and they didn't. So injuries aplenty and bad coaching why they're not making the Super Bowl. Now we have the Washington Redskins. I thought this team was one of the most underrated teams in football up until the Monday Night Football game, and I thought they were going to give more aggression to the Eagles, and they really didn't. I think this is a team that's just very questionable at some parts of the field. I think a big loss, in the offseason of the Redskins was losing both Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon, 2,000-yard receivers last season that were very good for Kirk Cousins. Terrell Pryor's a good receiver, but he hasn't been on the field to make that much production for them. And then now you have injuries aplenty on the offensive line that they had in the Monday Night Football game. Josh Norman is still hurt with those broken ribs. This team's a little bit in questionable, very questionable. I had this team going 8-8 at the preseason, and that could still very be the case. Or, they're 3-3 right now. They need to regroup. They have a lot of injuries. I just don't see this team going that far with it. Now we have my Dallas Cowboys, which is hard to talk about why your team won't win the Super Bowl, but I think it's kind of obvious. I like what they're doing here. I've always said that this team right now at best is going to be a wild card team, and then they're just going to be trying to be very scrappy. The thing is that defense is not set. They're not. I know we got a lot of things going against the 49ers, but look, it's the 49ers. We played some good teams with good offenses this year. We haven't been able to stop crap. The Broncos game, the Rams game, and the Packers game, huge examples. Our 3 losses, huge examples of how many points we've given up. There's just not enough experience. We need experience. We need to get these guys in there for a couple of years. A couple of guys I do like on the defensive side. Sean Lee is still great. You got some key players that are going to be there very soon, but they're not there yet, and they're making some big mistakes, and it sucks. It sucks. Jordan Lewis, I think, is great, and he's going to get there very soon, but the defense we're not going to be able to stop big offenses with the way our defense is playing right now. It's not going to happen. Our offense is great minus Terrence Williams, but defensively, it's not going to be able to stop some of the most high explosive offenses in the NFL. And the last NFL team we have here is the Philadelphia Eagles, AC's Eagles. I like what this team brings. I like Carson Wentz. I like their running game. Nelson Aguilar's had a comeback season, and those will be some of their positives. I think losing Jason Peters and Aaron Hicks for the rest of the season is going to be critical. But if we're looking past that, I think this team will make the playoffs. And we've seen the questionability of them having success in the playoffs beforehand. You know, they were able to get somewhere down the line, but towards the NFC Championship game, it just wasn't to be. I think some teams could prove to be, hard for this team. And then if they start off slow in some of these games with high octane offenses and offenses that are going to be able to score, I don't really know if the comeback is there for the Eagles. I'm not 100% on that. I have to see that. But it's just all about, the playoff production. Are they going to be able to produce in the playoffs? And I'm questioning that with the Eagles. So thank you for watching this extremely long video, this topic video. I know I wanted to do this one on a Tuesday because it was going to be a little bit difficult to talk about every team and why they won't win the Super Bowl. Please don't be too harsh in the comments. It's all my opinion. And I think some of these teams obviously have a good chance to make it to the Super Bowl. That's why it was a little bit harder to get some of those points out there. It's just a video examining every team's chances. And next video will be why your team will win the Super Bowl, unless there's a couple of teams that won't. But I wanted to get the more negative one out of the way first, so that the more positive one, you guys will enjoy and feel good about that one. So, and that'll be pretty much the official halfway mark of the NFL season too. So, thank you guys for watching. Like the video, comment below. Am I right? Am I wrong? My examination. Subscribe to the Bottom Line View. Hit that notification bell. We post a lot of videos. We post daily. Good stuff is on the way. So thank you. Dylan of the Bottom Line View. Peace.